Okay, we have day 4, the Tom Girardi trial, legal trial of the century, and now we're really getting into the nitty-gritty. We're starting to get the nuts and bolts from some of the accounting people, one accounting person in particular, and it's starting to get a little bit more interesting and also kind of filling in some of the pieces. And the big news that I saw today is that this accounting person that worked for Girardi's firm says that over $70 million went from the trust account to the operating account over the course of 10 years. And so that's the kind of money we're talking about. Huge, huge amounts of money flowing into the Girardi's operating account, where of course they then are using it for their own good. So what were your thoughts, Stewart, in terms of what you saw for day 4?
So the thing that really struck me was one of his clients had a pelvic mesh injury, and you and I handled some of those cases a few years back. And these are very tragic cases where these women's lives are essentially destroyed. They can't sit, they can't stand, they can't lay down. They're just in constant pain. And, you know, there was this, when we were doing this litigation, the manufacturers of this pelvic mesh, this polypropylene device, they would talk about how it was the gold standard. It was the gold standard to basically destroy you as a person. And Tom Girardi got one of these cases and settled it for a relatively small amount, $60,000. And the client is emailing him, and it's just tragic because she's saying, I can't even call you anymore. I can't even talk to you anymore because I just end up in tears. And we know the MO so far from other witnesses that Mr. Girardi would yell at people if they challenged him. He would rush them off the phone. And here's this lady, a very paltry sum, I hate to say it, $60,000. And in the meantime, over a decade, he's moving $70 million so that he can have lavish Christmas parties, so that he can, you know, have parties that, you know, show that he's the man and he's doing so well. And he's doing this on the backs of these people who just simply were entitled to a very small amount, and yet he wouldn't do it. I'm getting angrier and angrier. I'm getting angrier and angrier as this case goes along.
Yeah, and it really is crazy. You're talking about money spent for lavish parties, country clubs. He would have a standing party where Leanne Rimes would come and perform every year. I mean, these are not small amounts. And then the prosecutors today also showed a chart that showed that $21 million were, from Girardi and Keese went to EJ Global, which of course is Erica Girardi's entertainment company, from 2010 to 2020. So you know that at least $21 million of this money went to fund EJ Global. And apparently Erica Girardi's attorney said that, well, the money didn't go directly to EJ Global, but rather vendors would send their bills into Girardi and Keese and they would be paid. And to my way of thinking, you know, who cares? It's the same difference.
That's a distinction without a difference.
Exactly. And so, you know, whether you give me all of your money, Stewart, or whether you pay all my bills, I will be happy either way. So your choice.
So, Keith, you and I were talking about this earlier. The other thing that hit me about this article is we're looking at the defense and we're trying to apply just plain old logic to it, which juries have to believe what you're telling them. It has to make sense. So there has to be some degree of logic to it. I mean, some of this is just an emotional response as well. But there has to be a logical basis here. Do you want to walk us through what you and I were talking about from a logical syllogism? Does it make sense that the defense is saying, well, do you see any emails that show that this was a problem that Mr. Girardi knew about? What's the problem with that syllogism?
Yeah, I mean, you're taking two things that are independently probably true, and then you're trying to extrapolate a conclusion, which is probably not true. And so you're saying that and the defense attorneys made this point that Girardi was not on any of the emails discussing the settlement payments for the pelvic mesh case. So what's the significance of that? And then I think they're saying, well, he wasn't on the emails, and if he wasn't on the emails, then he wouldn't have known that this poor lady wasn't being paid, and therefore, how could he be guilty of this? But of course, that flies in the face of the conversations he had with this lady, where he specifically told her that he has to check with the presiding judge, that the federal court system was messing this all up, and just running around in circles. And at some point, the lady from the pelvic mesh case said, I never felt that Tom Girardi was confused or had dementia, but I felt like he was trying to confuse me in terms of his explanation of all of this. So, what is the significance of, okay, every time an attorney who worked for Girardi's firm sent an email to the client, she didn't copy Girardi. Well, he must have not known, and ergo, he must be, what, innocent?
Yes. So you're taking a true statement. He's not on the emails, is he? And you can just proudly say, as a witness, no, he's not on the emails. And then the defense attorney is going to say, aha, since he's not on the emails, he didn't know. And it's like, no, that's such a leap of logic to go from he's not on the emails, he didn't know. It's kind of like if some person, let's say a girlfriend of a guy calls his wife and says, hey, your husband's been cheating on you. And the husband comes home and the wife accuses the husband of cheating on her. And he goes, well, look at my emails. Is there anything in my emails that would show that I was cheating on you?
Yeah.
And then the wife just magically goes and looks at the emails and goes, oh, no, there is nothing in there. Therefore, you must not have cheated on me. That's essentially what they're trying to sell this jury. You can still cheat on your wife without putting it in emails.
Yeah, as long as it's not in writing, then it didn't happen, which, of course, defies logic. But again, I think some of this too, that defense is doing the best they can. And, there's not a ton to go on here, to be honest. And the attorney who was working for Girardi's office, Erin Scapa, who now is apparently a solo practitioner, she's the one who was dealing with Miss Hernandez, who was the pelvic mesh client. And Erin, once the client threatened to turn her into the state bar because she wasn't getting her money, which I can imagine a client would be very frustrated with that, she hands in her resignation letter to Girardi. Girardi throws it back in her.
Who's she? Who turned in her resignation letter?
Yeah, that's very important. So for those of you who want to become lawyers, it's very important not to use pronouns all the time. So let's keep this straight. So Erin Scapa, the attorney who worked for Girardi, handed in her resignation letter. And when she did, apparently Girardi threw it back in her face. And then subsequently, he left numerous voicemails for her on her phone, trying to intimidate or scare her into coming back to work, I guess, which, obviously didn't work. I don't know why anybody would think that would work. But again, now we're back to the intimidation factor. And so it's like what you said earlier, Stuart, you have an MO going on here where it's, intimidation, or there's another attorney he was talking to, an attorney who was representing a former client on a malpractice claim against Girardi, where he said, we didn't do anything wrong. This is Girardi speaking. Tom Girardi's telling this attorney, we didn't do anything wrong. We were just stupid. We screwed up. Don't be mad. Be nice. Forgive me, and ask the client to forgive me. So
terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's going from sweet to intimidating to sweet to intimidating.
Yeah, no, when I saw that, and he left that on a voicemail, if my memory's correct. Again, we have to be a little bit careful here. We have to let the system do what the system does. The jury has to hear all the evidence. But from our eyes and from what we're seeing, and we're seeing some excellent reporting on this, it looks like this guy was a horrible person. And then when he gets in a place where he's in trouble, he asks for mercy. He asks for grace. And he doesn't deserve it if the things they're saying about him are true.
Yeah. And the former accountant that worked for Girardi even said that around the time of 2020, when everything went south, she could no longer pay the bills. There just was no money left to pay the bills because, of course, they had gone through so much. And so eventually the entire scheme just runs out of steam and everything implodes, is what appears has happened.
Yeah. When you don't have $60,000 out of this $20 million that went to Erica Jane Girardi, whatever her last name is, you don't have $60,000 to give to this poor woman who's been gravely injured by this medical device and probably is still dealing with the pain of it today. This is despicable conduct. And to think that, again, Tom Girardi, I'm gonna bring this back on a personal level, Keith. You actually met Tom Girardi litigating a case once, and can you walk us through that experience you had with Mr. Girardi at that time? And that would have been around 2009 or 10?
Yeah, pretty early on, I guess. Yeah, probably about 2008, 2009, right in there. And the LA County Court was trying a new program called Early Neutral Evaluation. It was supposed to take place before people did discovery to determine if there was any grounds to try and settle the case before people spent a whole bunch of money on their lawsuit. And I had one in front of Mr. Girardi. And yeah, he was very demanding. He was very short. He was very direct. I mean, ultimately that case didn't settle, and he just told the parties, well, you just have to try your case. But yeah, I definitely got the impression of somebody who was very gruff. Now, at the time, you know, that was probably before all this was happening. You're thinking, well, you know, he's a successful plaintiff's attorney and he's a little surly. And so, you know, maybe that's to be expected from somebody who's at that level. I don't know. But he definitely did not come across as a warm, fuzzy person, I can tell you that. And, you know, that was just my own personal interaction with Tom Girardi. And, of course, anytime that you and I would see him at the Cal Law Convention, it's the Plaintiffs' Attorneys Convention out in Las Vegas, he always put on a good face and you know, presented very well when he did his presentations. And everybody thought, you know, he was a high-level plaintiff's attorney, you know, one of the top plaintiff's attorney in Los Angeles, maybe the country. So it is shocking to see what's really coming out now and just how far, you know, somebody like that has fallen. The other thing that was interesting is the accountant that was testifying, she actually said that she never saw the CFO, Kamen, never saw him refuse to pay a client. And so as far as she could tell, he wasn't the one refusing to pay clients. It was Tom Girardi who would decide which clients get paid and how much they would get paid. So he alone would make that determination according to this accountant that worked for Girardi and Keys. So just put that in your mind for right now. I'm sure that's going to be a returning theme both throughout the rest of the prosecutor's case, but we'll probably revisit that as Girardi presents his case in chief on his defense, and we'll kind of see how that shakes out. But that was interesting testimony, I thought, in terms of trying to, again, drive a wedge in the defense argument that this isn't Girardi's fault, this is Kamen's fault.
So, Keith, the million-dollar question here is, does Girardi take the stand when the defense has its turn? And the case I could not remember from South Carolina was the murder trial, Alex Murdaugh.
That's right.
And he took the stand, and it was a disaster. Of course, he had to throw a Hail Mary and hope for the best because it didn't look good, much like this case doesn't look good for Tom Girardi. Obviously, they're accused of very different crimes. But you know, what do you think? I think we know what his lawyer would say, but what do you think? Do you think Tom Girardi is going to be able to withstand his internal desire to get up and set the record straight?
I don't think so. And, you know, the problem is you have a guy who spent his entire career talking to juries and doing very well in front of juries, obviously. You know, he had made tens of millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars talking to juries. And so you also have somebody who clearly, you know, I mean, it doesn't appear as though there's a whole lot of remorse going on here, and I haven't seen anything like that. Of course, we're in the middle of a criminal trial, so maybe he just doesn't say anything. But I would think that it'd be very difficult for somebody like Tom Girardi not to take the stand and want to talk to the jury. Now, his attorney is going to say, you absolutely must not take the stand. That would be the advice that any rational attorney would give him. But I would not be surprised if we see Tom Girardi taking the stand. I don't see how he resists it. What do you think, Stuart?
Yeah, he's going to try. Well, and the same thing with Alex Murdaugh. He thought he could sweet talk the jury. And he was, you know, when I watched Alex Murdaugh, and I wish we could watch this case live, but when we watched Alex Murdaugh, you could tell he could spin a tale, and he was very smooth and good. But the problem is everybody knew that he killed his son and he killed his wife, which is just, I mean, I can't imagine living with that. Here, Tom Girardi, I think the jury's going to pick up that, you know, this guy, not only is he competent and understands what's going on, he was the one running the show, calling the shots, and now he's trying to put the blame at somebody else's feet, which apparently there's some blame there. And again, that's that whole logical syllogism. You know, their argument is, well, Christopher Kamen did it, the CFO did it, and therefore Tom Girardi is innocent. Well, the therefore does not naturally follow that. It could be that Christopher Kamen is guilty of what he did and wrong for what he did and all the other things that go with that. But it could also be that Tom Girardi was wrong and unethical and did things that he shouldn't have done. And so, one is not mutually exclusive of the other. Tom Girardi looks to be a bad actor here. It looks like he was calling the shots. It looks like he was in charge. And maybe Christopher Kamen saw that behavior and decided to dip his toe in the water as well and get what he could. But this does not look good for Mr. Girardi at this point in time.
Yeah, both could be guilty. I mean, both Kamen and Girardi could be guilty of crime. So apparently what we've learned today is that you can steal money, and even though you don't put it in a text, you've still stolen money.
That's a good lesson to learn. It's not that difficult to learn that either.
It's not that difficult, but some people just never pick it up. So, okay, great. Well, that's day 4. They are, I believe they're in trial today. So we will be picking up on our Girardi trial updates tomorrow. And stay tuned to hear more of our thoughts on this legal trial of the century.